Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
As Army civilians who have been identified as surplus begin receiving automated notices giving them a few days to decide whether to accept a reassignment, retire early, or opt in for a buyout, many are making these life-altering decisions with limited information. Here with an update to her story from Monday is Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis. Anastasia, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Terry.
You've been hearing from civilians who've received these notices. What are they saying?
Yeah, so civilians first got this message to the force saying that the goal is to strategically reassign employees to vacant positions across the Army, not to conduct a reduction in force. And we know that, we talked about it recently. The message said that the leadership will provide support options for this transition, including early retirement and buyouts, and they will reimburse expenses if people have to move to a different location. And while employees can submit a hardship claim for consideration, declining a valid management-directed reassignment, as they call it, will result in termination from federal service. So those who have been identified as surplus have been getting these automated notices saying, hey, you're surplus and you will receive a reassignment. Also, you have these buyout or early retirement options. However, those notices do not confirm employees' eligibility, leaving many to figure out what it is that they're qualified for and what it is that they might receive in the end.
If an employee is thinking about accepting a buyout, what should they consider before taking it?
Yeah, so first, in terms of who's eligible for this they call it voluntary separation incentive payment. Permanent federal employees who have been employed for 3 years may be eligible for a buyout, but there are multiple caveats. If they have recently received incentives such as student loan repayments, recruitment or relocation bonuses, they're not eligible for a buyout, and there are more criteria. If you're eligible, however, financial advisors say that it's very important to remember that buyouts are paid out as a lump sum, so they're subject to income taxes, which means that roughly 20% of the payment will be lost to taxes. So since it's a lump sum, there is no more income coming in. So it's important to calculate how long that post-tax lump sum will last you. They also need to make sure that they have a full copy of their electronic official personnel file on a non-work device for various reasons, but one reason being if civilians who have more than 5 years of service, they will be eligible for pension later, and they will go through that process, to apply. When they're going through that process of applying for that, they will have all that paperwork ready to go. Experts also recommend leaving their retirement contributions in the system, even though it might be tempting to take it out, especially given these circumstances. But if you leave your contributions in, you can come back later and claim your pension when you're eligible. And just one more thing that I'll mention is a buyout comes with a 5-year restriction. So if you decide to go back and work for federal government within that time period, you will have to pay that money back.
That's really important advice. What about for folks who are thinking about early retirement? Who's in the best position to take the voluntary early retirement?
I mean, no matter what, it's a tough decision to be out of a job when that wasn't exactly your plan. But employees who were already thinking about retirement, they meet eligibility requirements, which is minimum age, it's 57. Those people are better positioned to take the offer, even if the timing is a little earlier than they expected. It's not ideal, but at least they know this is an option for them. Now, for those employees who are eligible for early retirement, and those would be employees of any age with 25 years of service, or those at least 50 with 20 or more years of service. It's a difficult spot to be in. Depending on your age, you still have maybe up to 20 years of work in you left. And, somebody with 2 decades of service hasn't had the time under their belt to grow their TSP account. They're probably going to get maybe 1/4 of their salary at best. So consider insurance and other deductions. You're looking maybe at $1,000 a month. And of course, that's not enough. So the first step would be getting some education on retirement planning, because many have probably never attended like kind of pre-retirement classes or know how to calculate their benefits. And then another tip is to have a plan to manage inflation. But the good news is that if you've had your federal health insurance for 5 years, you will be able to keep it. So you're one step ahead, meaning that gives you some breathing room if you want to maybe go and work for a small business, or maybe you want to start something of your own. That just gives you a little bit of freedom.
Anastasia, there's still a lot of uncertainty facing these employees. What are the biggest questions they're still asking, and is there any more information coming in their direction?
Yeah, I mean, there are many things. Civilians say that, we talked about it, but civilians say that, they've gone through 2 rounds of DRP. They've gone through probationary workers being fired, a shutdown. And so they finally felt like things are slowing down and they can start doing their job. And now they feel like they're being hit with this rebalancing effort. Many civilians who have reached out to me said that they're not interested in, or they're just not able to move locations. A lot of them are not interested in a buyout either. So the question remains, what happens to people in those positions? What happens to people in positions who don't have a match? If the Army doesn't have a match for them, the Army says that they're avoiding a reduction in force, and they will do everything, to find people vacant roles. But at the same time, what if they don't? Will those workers be terminated? And that sounds like a reduction in force.
That's Federal News Network's Anastasia Obis. Thanks for keeping us posted.
Thank you, Terry.
You can find her full story at federalnewsnetwork.com.